of focusing. At the beginning of the Congress, I said that humanity, that human beings, we all had an ET origin, but because of the time, I didn't speak. I only spoke about the biological origin. I haven't been investigating about this for 30 years, and this doesn't. This is not a simple biological experiment. I am convinced that 2,500 years ago, a civilization, an ET civilization, came to this world and got into the men matters, acted into the men matters, and they did it not only to help us, but also to help themselves. After having been studying all this for 30 years, I'm not so sure which are the intentions from these beings that are visiting us, because their relationship with us has been different a long time. If you look at the sacred texts, not only the Bible, Mahabharata, Ramayana, the Popol Vuh, and so many sacred books all over our planet, you will see that there's a similar idea that they transmit. They wanted us to believe that they were gods. They told us how to be farmers, how to build the metals. From then on, all these things that could be good teachings, they went and they promised that they would come back. One expects that this return is there so that we can communicate in an equal way, so that when they come back, they will keep teaching us, they will keep helping us go forward. But this coming back has never happened in this way, because it's true that in modern times, from the 47th until now, we are seeing many things on our skies, on the ground. Witnesses, such as we heard yesterday here, that make us think that this relationship has changed. Or either there is more than one civilization visiting us, or we have to think that there is a multiplicity of origins from this phenomenon. This is my thesis. This is what I defend. And this goes, it's quite, agrees a lot with this multiple universe, this multiplicity of worlds that could be sharing time and space with us. So right now, in this stage is the José from yesterday, is Giuseppe from 2 days ago, is the wedding that was celebrated here last week, and everything is repeating itself in a temporary loop. When I project my hand on the screen, you can see the second dimension. There's a book from a Reverend Edwin Abbott called Flat One, a Land Many Dimensions, in which he says that the inhabitants of the second dimension of the shadow world, they are visited by a sphere. Imagine this sphere, when it goes into the second dimension, the beings from the second dimension only have width and length. They can see the sections as if it was a tomography, as a scanner, and they can see the horizontal sections. In the moment this is coming into the second dimension, but they never have a global vision from the apple, for example, the circle, from the sphere that is going through them. And I wonder if these observations of these things that we are seeing are not bits, small parts of a huge universe that is surrounding us. If this is so, the old shamans, the contactees from today, the old spiritists, and the future people that will contact, they are all together in the same thing. They have a perception of that world that's merely partial. partial, or if you allow me, this is a reflection, maybe fractal, so to say. It could be a little bit from something that repeats itself, a little bit like a spiral, like the logo that we have in our Congress, that surrounds us and surrounds our reality. We as human beings, as small beings, we only can conceive our three dimensions. Only now that modern physics, quantum physics, and also spirituality, what quantum physics has achieved in spirituality, they have managed to gather together and unite science and religion together. This helps us see the world with other eyes, in a different way. The eyes invite us to leave behind us these differences, to leave behind all the things that divide us, to fight together to achieve the same goal. And this is walking together into the future like an only human race. And this is the most important point for the Earth beings. We are living difficult times with constant menace inside and outside from our planet. But only when our awareness as a species is unified, we will be able to work as a unique organism, and we will add up all our brains to achieve an objective, which is the perpetuation of our species and to survive to our own destruction, in the same way that our differences are always bigger and that we don't understand each other, and this is more difficult between us. It's very complicated that we are able to advance as a species and survive ourselves. And if we, as a unique organism, all our brains work together, I'm convinced that this difficulty that we have to go through, to go into space, into interdimensional space, this is going to be nothing. I don't know which is the mechanism, like what Carlos Ferguson suggested yesterday, and also Daniel Muñoz. It's not important that if we believe or not, if it's possible to achieve it, but we will make it. And I'm sure that humanity will make it, and we will be able to transcend, even if it's with our body. And this was also spoken yesterday about transhumanism. Maybe if we put our awareness into something that's immortal, because we usually think that the biological organism is perfect. And up to a point, this is so. There's not a better machine, evolutionary machine, that has allowed us to survive these 65 million years when dinosaurs disappeared, and this primate has managed to control the world. But we all know that we are going to die. Nowadays, the frontiers, the limits of life are always widening and widening, and the scientists promise that in 65 years, not so long, they will be able to get to the immortal organism. I have always thought that I prefer to die and than to see that everybody else around me is dying. This makes me ask the question if my brain is going to be able to accept all these things, and I will be able to process all these things, or if I won't be able to keep sharing information and living. But if this limitation wasn't there, if we could be always there and we would be perfect, beautiful, seductive and wonderful and attractive, we would love to be eternal. And if this would allow us to break the death barrier, then we would say, which is the problem? No, there's no problem. Maybe that's the solution. Maybe there's the solution. If there's a purpose in life, and we all are looking for that individually, but there's a purpose in a collectivity, this civilization, the human civilization, may get united to other civilizations and look for the things that centuries and centuries all sages have been looking for. And this is to unite, to reunite with God. Although God is in ourselves, but God is also in all of them. So the last purpose, the ultimate purpose of life maybe is this, the union of all species to evolve together. I won't, I'm not gonna annoy you anymore with my speech. Enrique, our speaker, is here, so I'm very thankful for the attention you paid. Okay. Enrique, I've been speaking a little bit. I know that everybody is expecting him a lot. Again, I will repeat, I love him. I love him deeply. I'm not gay, but I love him deeply. Enrique de Vicente, I think he doesn't need to be presented. He's been investigating for more than 50 years. Although he doesn't look like being old, he's a seductor. He was vice president in the Spanish Society, Parapsychological Spanish Society. He's a journalist, he's specialized in all those. And when I say all these subjects, I'm not only talking about ufology. He's like a big encyclopedia. And everything which is related to mystery. He spoke about science, paranormal effects, conspiracies. I could be talking about him from many things. In 1981, he directed the first course about ufology in a university. And this shows clearly that he's very interested in this subject and to take these subjects into the place which is most appropriate for his systematization, which is university. He's author of a very successful book that was able to share some of the chapters with him. It has been published in 6 different countries. The name is Codes from the Studies from the Da Vinci Code, and it was a very good success. He's very well known for being part of the Cuarto Milenio. It's a TV series, but he has been in many different programs, Cadena SER, Radio Nacional de España, Televisión Española, and ET with me in History Channel. And I'm honored to say that he was founder and director until he retired from a very well-known magazine in Spain and in South America, and it's called Año Cero. Ladies and gentlemen, Enrique de Vicente. Thank you very much, José. Have a wonderful day. Good morning. I'm thankful to José that he has been able to speak a little bit to you before me, because I was a little bit late. For me, it was very good what I heard from José, because after all, José has spoken about the essential from what he has spoken not only about the conclusion but the subject of the conference, the Congress. What I'm worried about is not only the big questions, where we go, where do we come from, but also essentially, deeper than that, the question would be, who are we really? Apart from the appearances, where are we really going? And Josep has said a couple of things. Everything has a lot to do with widening our vision, our understanding of what we call the UFO phenomenon or the contacts. I would say ultra-terrestrial, more than ET, because the place where we go, which is the reason of living. This would allow us to get closer to these beings that visit us, whose nature, whose procedures, by definition, by necessity and by principle, they are far away from our understanding. And it's also impossible to say that a dog, that a monkey, and like Wasu monkey, the Wasu monkey, they are able to speak the sign language for the deaf, 1,500 words. They are able to articulate that. It's impossible to understand ourselves. But this is a huge gap to these beings, or with some of these beings, because there are many beings and it's even bigger than we think. José has already talked about evolution, and he said if we manage to live 100 years, but the subject is, are we able to live in this body, in this organism? I like this comparison. I am not a reductionist. I don't believe in essential forces. I do believe in essential forces. I believe in the spirit. But our body is a machine. The biological beings are machinery. But the most important is not that. It's the phantom, the spirit that lives in this machine and that should become, sometimes he's a guest, most of the time he's trapped, and he should be directing consciously this machine and take this biological machine to an evolution process in the future. Going back to what José said, we have two possibilities in big traits, more than two, but these two would allow us to understand something from these visits. One of them is obviously, let's say, keep modifying our organism, our machinery, or the hardware. In the last intervention on TV, I spoke about the DNA and how the DNA is the software, but more than the software, let's say, the operating system from the living beings. I have to look at my watch so that I can see that the time, but it keeps sliding down. Let's see if I can see it. So this way I can control time. I was saying that DNA is this, but what happens there? The evolution transhumanists are saying that evolution will be not only clean or solve the defects that we have in our DNA or our genetic inheritance, so that we can rid of many illnesses and live longer. And apart from that, we will have to keep embodying more mechanism in this machinery. These glasses are a mechanism. This way I can see better, and this way I can correct the problems that I have in my eyes. And also I have implants in my mouth, and there are people that have implants in the heart. They are devices that are there and that can improve our lives. They think that we are going to a kind of cyber body. We will have more and more mechanism and elements and devices that will make us a mixture between man and machine. This is one line of evolution that, according to transhumanism, and I'm talking about many people in a technological way, and it's been very accepted by the established system, not like the crazy people that do these things. Kurzweil speaks, for example, about the future, about the spiritual machines. And he's a Japanese, born in the States, a puppy in television. He conceives that in the future we will be able to separate from our physical body and travel with our consciousness to very far away places, like throwing our awareness there. This is another line, independence from the body. And this is a line that I think if we widen this vision, we would be able to understand many things from antiquity. How many of the different lines of gods that visited us, not on ships, they went into another level and they incarnated into terrestrial machines, or maybe they got trapped here and they were able to survive generating lines of, for example, genetical lines, basing a royal house and incorporating their awareness into different generations. This is, I'm only giving you a big, broad idea, but there's another evolution line, and it's very important to speak about it before we get into it. What I'm going to talk about today is very practical, it's with a lot of data, and the most important thing is that we don't miss this general approach, because this will allow us to keep this vision, this widening, broadening of awareness, and this will allow us to jump over this abysm that we have there. It's there. It's already in the Caribbean. with all the things that are happening nowadays on the earth, the place where the Mayas were their last years, and we can see it. But we also have it here in Catalonia, in Spain, the confrontation, the not being able to taking the place of the other, and not understanding that the wolf is coming. The wolf is not here. The wolf is the nature that we have provoked. The wolf is the son, father's son, that is coming to awaken us, hitting us, like kicking us, because we are hypnotized, we're robotized. We are so controlled by the system and all the procedures, the social engineering, machinery that are conditioning us, that we are only if the Father's Son give us the blessing and slaps us and fuses for some years this civilization, for some years he will avoid to finish this crisis that we are living at the moment through a war. And this would be terrible, wouldn't it? Or also the Mother Earth, that can contribute to awaken us with things like terrible things, like the ones that our brothers, the Mexican brothers, have lived. This is my conception, the way I see things. But the most important is, over that, we have to be aware that everything that develops around us, and I'm sorry, because this is not what I will speak about, but for me this is essential. And not speaking about the essential thing for me would be a traitor to my principles. I would be a traitor to the need, to the mission that I feel from the little things that I have been suing on all my life, to be able to investigate, to use all these seeds that I have managed to receive, to plant the seeds so that to see if the plant grows. But the most important is that we understand right now, today, and every moment, all the terrible moments that are awaiting us in the next 5 years, most of all, that we have to understand that all the things that developed outside of us, all the wars, all the conflicts, all the catastrophes, all the things that are outside from us are only a reflex from what we have inside. And the most important is not stop looking at to the outside, but that we keep aware of ourselves and that we understand that the real fight, the only fight that's important, is the fight that goes inside, in our awareness. It's a fight between dream and awakening, involution and evolution. Between consciousness and unconsciousness. The most important is awaken the awareness. That's the only that's really important. And what happens after this, we don't know when or how much. As you have been able to see, and you have experienced, not only seen, you have experienced in your cells, the cells that the dictionary, like Sri Aurobindo and other people, I'm speaking about many people, knew about the evolution that awaits life. Not only the human species. Human species needs to understand that it's not a kingdom. It's a species, but it's not a kingdom. There's not the mineral plants kingdom. The human being is a human animal. It's a kind of step between the animal kingdom and the kingdom that we would call divine, godly. And this is our level of evolution. This is our future. And in this future, as you have experienced in yourselves, in the programming of yourselves, when you have been meditating and visualizing yourselves, the programming that we have in there is to evolve into unthinkable forms, into which we finish in this divine kingdom, and this death is going away, and this something new starts. There's a new nature. In this new nature is where we really can live the principle that many beings, that many youngsters are looking for. The vegans, from a rational point of view, vegans, I could make a big critic, but I can see the light there, and I can see that this new being doesn't need to be a predator. There are two ways there, and these are the two ways that the beings that are here, not only that visit us, they are here, they were here, and they will be here, and they have been here for thousands of years. I will tell you later on when I start the subjects. We have to decide if we take the way of love, of giving, or the way of taking, or selfishness, expansion and contraction. These are the two ways that we have. That's what a way does. But I'm going back after this introduction that shouldn't have been here, but it's very essential, and it was very nicely initiated by José. The subject from today is following all these principles, and so that we can understand, not being talking very long about it. Is it possible? This is a very rational thing. It's not what we believe. It's not what I feel. Is what I experience. These are particular data, precise data. Is it possible that if somebody has found an extraterrestrial ship, that this is hidden? This is impossible. Nobody believes that. We should know what I'm going to try to demonstrate widely, because I have been able to get only a third part of the images. It was a conference for 4 hours. So yesterday evening, I was until very late. I've slept only 3 hours to shorten it and keep some of the things. There are things that are maybe added there. I've asked Robin if someone could bring me some water, but I didn't want to stop speaking. Thank you. Thank you. What I said is that the essential is to see how this hiding is being possible. I've spoken about Roswell case, but it's not the only case. To synthesize some of the steps of how they hid all of these things to us, because in a rational view, they will allow us to see against what has been said. There has been something transcendental that happened there. There was an inflection point in United States history, and it was, apart from Roswell, some days afterwards, 19 days after that, it was authorized, Truman authorized the building of all the intel services, all the intel apparatus that has governed the world since then. We were speaking about Roswell. What happens there? In Roswell, as in many other subjects, there have been points, let's say the social engineering. They know very much how they can manipulate things. And through things, they always get into these subjects, other absurd elements that get us away and take rational people and make them think that this is crazy thing. When this film appeared, I was directing Año Cero and Javier Sierra. It was one of the times that he was working with me. Javier came running when nobody had heard about it in San Marino in a congress, and he said first on the phone, he says about the film, and I was asking, but come on, Javier, do you believe that? And when he came and he said, come on, I asked him, come on, think about it. I asked him some questions. There were no images about it. I thought that it was made up. And when we were talking about the photos, and when we're talking about it in the magazine, I have been working on the magazine with brainstorming with my team, and we have discussed to the last detail. And of course, my opinion was the most important, but not the only one. So if there was a difference in meaning, then I would say my say, and everybody had to be convinced about the things. But I was the only one that didn't want to get this picture on my magazine. But many of them were saying, no, come on, this is going to sell our magazine. And then we ended up publishing it. But I wrote an editorial saying that I didn't believe it and I don't believe it. I think this is a manipulation to this prestige completely the Roswell case, that in that moment the evidences were very primarial. Let's see what happened there. That's why this was ridiculized. In this moment, a year before, this is the man that appeared in the images. Stephen Schiff, the congressist from New Mexico, presents a Congress, a petition to the Congress to declassify all the information about Roswell. What finds he there? All the archives from that time had been destroyed. Oh, come on, this is a joke. This is a bad joke. Why? Because one can understand that all the paperwork and in all the American bases has to be recycled. when it wasn't computerized. I like these images, but in Roswell, they had 409 squadron. It was the aerial squadron, the most important one from the United States. Why? Because the 409, this was the one that pulled the nuclear bombs. This happened in Alamogordo, very close to Roswell, and then in the Pacific. It was really important to get all the documents and paperwork. It's a coincidence, not that this disappeared, but at the end, he's the one that goes to the Government Accountability Office, and they should have copies of the paperwork, even though they have been destroyed. They should, in theory, copy of all of them, and they ask for a research, for an investigation. I went to, in the 95, I went to pick up, and this I remembered in the last program in the space that I have started working in Radio Nacional instead of somebody else. And we were remembering, Javier and me, were remembering that I was going there, and I went to the FBI offices, that it was in the Twin Towers, and he didn't want to go into the towers at all. And I'm speaking about 6 years before, and Javier was a visionary there. The thing is that in this report, what it says, synthesized, is that what happened in Roswell are not Sonda. This is the 6th of July 1947 in Ohio. We are talking about a date before the date in which I have been speaking about Roswell, the 0 day from this event that changes history significantly. And if someone wants to ask, the date is the 7th of the 7th of the 7th. And I will tell you what this has to do with Aleister Crowley and his first disciple. Aleister Crowley, the biggest magician, Satanist, that believed that he was Antichrist. His big Jack Parsons, his disciple, he was one of the scientists that created the Jet Propulsion Lab, who has given us the theory. He was experimenting with high magic to open dimensional doors with a writer that then became the Scientologist Lafayette Rowe Hubbard, created Scientology. And that year, obviously the explanation Rowe Hubbard gave and about the organization is that he was working as a secret agent for the American authorities to get rid of these black magicians. But this happened, it's curious. After opening some dimensional doors, these things begin to happen. This is important. And so that we keep in mind that everything is beyond what we see. These flying saucers, metallic flying saucers. The important is it was not a common balloon. It was part of the Mogul project. Mogul project was taking balloons, these complex balloons, with metal bars. It was very complex. And the idea was to put the balloons to the high atmosphere to get any radiation proceeding from possible atomic tests from the Russian, because the Russian already had all the German scientists and they were afraid that they could develop nuclear weapons. It was top secret, but then hiding this justifies the extreme measures that they took to hit all the things that happened in Roswell. We can see here, it's very clear. This is part of this kind of balloons. As you can see, it's complex. But I don't see anything similar to a flying saucer, and I don't see bodies, the bodies that they say they found those days. Just after that, there's another report, and it's there only to answer while hundreds of witnesses, and I have dozens of them that lived there, and they assured they have had seen bodies of small beings and how they were transported. And then they created this report, and then they say that the puppets were these dummies. These dummies were puppets like the ones we use for cars accidents, and they were thrown to see if they would support the fallings and everything. But this had begun in the 53. They were so crazy, these witnesses, that they were confusing something that happened 6 or 7 years after that. Were they so confused? That's what they said. And these are some magazines that clarified Roswell, were puppets. And that's it. And then there was this UFO Center, the Roswell ET Museum and festivals where people dress up as ETs, and this with this final show. And of course, after this film, this is the burial, the luxury burial for the evidence that there was a ship, an ultra-terrestrial ship there. Here, I'm gonna go through very fast and just an overall idea to tell you that all of this takes place, Roswell and everything that happens around it, in a special moments for the human being, not only in the virtual alignment calculated by the Mayas. I don't know how, with so much advance. This is another question thing. Now, maybe you can ask me that if you want. And at this time, this was the final of this long account from the Maya calendar. It only says that the 3 prophecies that they are on stone, they say Bolonyokte will come down to earth on that day. Other prophecies say that Chilambalam, sorry, I'm trying, but I don't know why this is not working. I'm sorry. I don't know if somebody that can understand that can make it better. I'm waiting here. As I said, the important is to understand that we are at the end of a cosmical cycle, and we are at the beginning of a transition period that has to do with our situation. It has to do with the final of the 5 suns that the Aztecs speak about, Mayas and other cultures, Mesoamerican cultures. 25,625, they tell us the day, what the platonical time. But there are other things apart from that. We are at the end of many cycles, and this moment is very important, not only for the evolutionary jump that we can get here, or the distraction that I don't believe in, because life is so strong, and the programming that we have in our DNA is so strong that it will survive to anything. The important thing is not ask ourselves if we will survive or not. The question is, we are going to survive together. Are we going to be solidary? Are we going to keep our hands together and we will jump, or maybe only some of them? I go for solidarity and run away from confrontation to try and go to understanding. And I think these are courageous words that I have to say here in Catalonia and Spain. The thing is that all this process is not only a process that affects only the earth. It supposes, and I'm speaking about the experiences, things that we live, that I have lived in different places, and I'm speaking about how and where to do it, what was important to do, and trying to see, most of all having a close relationship to people that's capable of seeing with a big training, intellectual training, and they also have a visionary ability, and they have opened doors that were closed, that connect us not only to other places in the galaxy, with the center of the galaxy, or farther away from the center, that has been discovered, but they had already seen the shamans, the astronomers, Mayas. They didn't only use the vision, the outside vision, but also the inside vision, and they had seen that, they had seen a big black hole and it's been proved this is a huge black hole. That means really incredibly amazing hole. It includes many solar systems there. It's further away on the other side of the galaxy, on the other side of the universe. The most important is that this happens, and through these doors, these gates, come some beings, positive beings, and also the bad guys, and they are coming all the time. And these bad guys that are coming is that whereas the positive beings are following this line, the line of love, the line of cleaning, of giving yourself, surrender and not control, they demand themselves that they incarnate in babies and live and go through all the things that a human being has to go through, and they are real brothers of the human beings, the same as our brother, big brother Jesus Christ was, or Buddha, to surrender completely and go through the human experience, whereas the predators, the bad guys that are coming, are following this other. It's take the power, and what do? They obsess and possess human beings with the risico that, depending on how big their ego is, it's very easy to take the people with big egos. There are egos which are very big, very crazy, and egos which are very subtle. The ego from North Korea, the crazy one, or other egos like strong, like Trump, or the subtle one from the guy in France. But all of them, including all of us, the political leaders and activists, it's very easy to allow them to possess us, and that these beings do their destructional function and predator. The worse it gets, the better for them, their norm. They have lots of rules. One of them is divide and you will win, because what they are interested in is only not keep nourishing from us, but the human being is part of the confederation, the piracy. They want us to be part of that, and not that we are part of the brotherhood, the confederation, whatever you want to call it, not of light, but at least from coherence, from the supra-UNO. I'll continue because I'm going somewhere else. We're talking about dimensional doors, dimensional gates. I have experienced them. There was the last one on the 21st of December. A very strong one was the one that happened on 11/11/11. There were lots of bad guys that came. That was the state problem in Europe, where there were new rulers in Greece, in Italy, and this came out from Draghi. Some leaders and some other lines that we can identify by the name, and the one that is on top of the European Bank, and this conditioning, they are conditioning all ours and taking us to slavery. Gurdjieff. Who knows Gurdjieff? Can you take your hands up? And Robin, of course, I suppose with his training he knows that. Gurdjieff said the big master, but he and many others synthesized this, and they were speaking about the kingdom, the vegetal, mineral, and human, and angelical or superhuman. And each kingdom nourishes from the previous one. We nourish from the mineral, animal, and vegetal. And to the angelical kingdom nourishes from the inferior ones. But there are two ways of nourishing. And I'm simplifying very much. This is nourished from what they have all done, these little gods, or the big gods, or the gods from Emi, with all their followers, and the suffering, from pain, from the bad emotions, from violence, from conflict, all the things that you want. They nourish from that. And they have always been offered sacrifices, blood sacrifices, because the blood has something very special, but I cannot talk about it because it's very long. Or on the contrary, from harmony, from good vibration, from positive vibrations that we all radiate through love, through not only love, but also praying. The Martínez singings that we can see here and have here, from all this harmony. But the matter is, the important thing is to understand this when we consider the ETs and their appearances along history. I don't want to talk a lot about it, so I'm going to jump some. The important thing is when Roswell thing happened, and some years after that, I'm fascinated by mysteries, and for UFO that called flying saucers since my childhood. I was 12 years old. Giuseppe wasn't born yet, but they all started being children. There's a point where it comes. Children, the visionary children at 7 years old, they close their perception doors and they stop seeing other realities. Around 11 and 12, there's a possibility to open, and happens in many ways. Harry Potter happened when he was 11. This is a special date, and this also he started obsessing Giuseppe also for that. At that point, as I said, I remember perfectly having read many books, but there were many people that were admitting, no, come on, there are stars, and everything are stars, but no one has demonstrated that there are planets in other stars. Of course, and life is not possible to be there. Many people denied that straightly. When you spoke about that, they said, oh yes, green Martians. The thing is, time and time went by. This was the Roswell time, and no one had conceived that. It was hidden. But as time has been going, we have discovered that our solar system is one among millions of stars that we have in this galaxy, and it's one of the millions of galaxies that are in the visible universe. But apart from that, we will see, it's not only that, it's beyond some of the galaxies and the visible universe. Beyond this universe, all the theoretical physicians accept that there is a multiverse. Our universe, we can visualize it as a sphere. It's part, together with many other spheres, we don't know how many, other universes from a multiverse. But there are multiverses, I'm not speculating. Scientific American, our investigation, we have already spoken about it in Cuarto Milenio. There are multiverses from level 1, but in these multiverses, when we speak about the ultra-dimensional way, they contain other multiverse from level 2, level 3, and level 4. Imagine that. It's inconceivable. It's the subject of multidimensionality. It's something that we cannot understand, and it's only been conceived about a theoretical way, but at a practical level it's very difficult. Michio Kaku is one that has studied that, what hyperspace means. It doesn't mean that when we think how we can go from one star, such a further star, we are here and the star where they come from, it's as simple as folding the temporary space to jump in a moment where time closes by, but it's infinitely beyond that. It's beyond our understanding, but at least we know that there's a lot of reasons so that is this way. Of course, there are wormholes, and that's what I was telling you about before. For example, it's been denied, always been denied, that there was life in the solar system. Now we know that the conceptions of the ancient people from the 19th century, Kayamaris, the images, not correct. I could see that these rivers, they were rivers, and there's evidence, even if they're messing around with it, there's water in Mars. First point. Second point, we have discovered multitude of solar systems, solar systems from different stars, like giant stars like Jupiter. And therefore, there are too many evidences that there has to be life, ET life. Let's conceive as well that by logic, it's not the one who's saying it, cosmologists have said that in the 70s, that the logical thing is we only one civilization from thousands of millions processes that have been established in the thousands of millions of planets, that there necessarily has to be in our universe thousands of millions, that only one evolutionary line has completed the process up to where we are and jumped over the technological world and has survived. There's what it necessarily has to have, what many have, thousands of millions of years of antiquity, and I'm being very cautious. They have had time enough to control the galaxy. They have had time to reach any part of the galaxy. The life says create and co-create and expand all over the planet. And the same happens in a cosmical level. Therefore, the logical thing is that we have been visited forever and that we will keep being visited, because there's not only one evolutionary line, there are many that have been able to see the process. The incredible is that we have reached this conclusion scientifically, and theoretically this is accepted, but we still deny not only the ufology, but that there are ET ships to the Earth. Why is it so? For me, this was an important thing, like a symbol. When in Roswell was disprestiged, that a scientist, which I interviewed in Barcelona in the 70s in a congress where he was there, Carl Mitchell, he was the only astronaut that was on the moon, and he had a doctorate. He was a military pilot, engineer and doctor. He transformed when he came back, but the most important is that he said publicly, when he was old, after interrupting the interview, when I was speaking about UFO, the bodyguards he had, he stood up and went away. There was a lot of tension there. Why? Because he was forced not to speak about UFOs, and he had already said something. But at that moment he said, there's a ship, an ET ship in Roswell that has fallen down. This is the opinion of a scientist that when he was young, he spent a long time in Roswell because his father was one of the militaries that was in Roswell. So he knew what he was speaking about. He had spoken to thousands, hundreds of neighbors and militaries, and they all remembered a very recent memory about that. They were young and they were teenagers when this happened, and he said it without doubting it, without hesitation, and saying that he had spoken to scientists and militaries. But the important here, now I'm going to try and summarize, is that Roswell was not an only case. According to some documents that I didn't bring because I didn't want to bring too much information, because I had prepared about 50 documents. I'm speaking about declassified documents because of the freedom of information. There's a moment where it says that the President Truman interchanges with some others, and they speak related to Roswell. They speak about investigating the technology and comparing it to the technology from the other ship. When they speak about the other ship, they may speak about different things. I'm going to speak about two of them, but not in the States, but in other countries. There are others. One of them in Spitsberg, an island in the North Sea. It's a subject that the royal British family was very much interested in it. One of them is the Operation MO41. There's the book in which is based about the witness from relevant William Hoffman, when he was dying, his bed, when he was dying, that around the year 41, he is called by the military to go and so that he would receive his last sacraments, and he would take the sacraments to some people who were dying, and what he finds are small beings. This has blocked again. I don't know what I'm touching. I have to touch up here. What he finds are some beings, the ones that we know, and he bases his explanations on that, but on other things as well. The thing is, it's not only this case, there are many others. This case is the Cape Girardeau in Missouri, MO41, because it's the mission that they did in the 41. Probably I have broken the device. I have to take my watches apart from me, because otherwise they fall down and I break them. There's another one which is very important, another case. You probably have heard about the was LA battle. There are films about that in the year 42, when the United States was recently in the World War. There's an alert in the Pacific Ocean. There was a history that there probably could come some bombers from the Germans, and that they could bomb the west coast of America. What happened? There's an alert, and there's something on the heavens on LA, on Los Angeles, that starts throwing many projectiles. More than 1,000. There are pictures. It's part of it's in all the magazines, and many vague explanations. And the skeptical say that was a hysterical moment for everybody. There are many different versions, but they say it's hysteria. But there are rumors that something from what was happening on the sky was hit by projectiles and fell to the floor. So there's a second story about getting another object, but I don't want to speak too long in case that we cannot get the images back. What I was saying is there are other cases, previous cases. It's very important. If what they saw in Roswell was a balloon, a sonda balloon from Mogul, it's a coincidence that it went down on the 7th of July of the year 47, and then there was an OVNI wave in 21 different states in the States, with more than 1,000 cases documented, properly documented. There were dozens of thousands of cases, but really well documented. They appeared on the press. More than 1,000 were on the press, and this happened all over the States. There were balloons all over the States, or maybe there was a secret American ship. They were experimenting not only in New Mexico, but in the whole States. This didn't make any sense. This made it up that on the 24th of July, 14 days before something falls down in Roswell, Arnold said that he saw a squad that is going on the air, flying like as if they were flying saucers. And there comes the expression, because they seem to be jumping. It's okay. It's okay. I'm not very solidary. I'm not thinking what she's suffering. The thing, as you can see, this doesn't make any sense. Any explanation that they can give us can make no sense. But I may say as well, there are other cases. I'm not going to talk about them. There are other stories. The important is that they are OVNI waves, UFO waves on the 20th century in different places in the planet. There are simultaneously, in the civil war in Spain, we can see different cases as well. And at least one of the witnesses was a military that fought there. And this happened in the Republican front as in the National Front, the Spanish front. And there are different witnesses. Oscar Hebrea, he's already dead, but he saw that in Guadalajara, in the battlefront, a UFO came down through a kind of stairs, and there was a being coming down. And there are many hundreds of cases documented. And he creates some offices and departments to analyze what the planes see, and even the German, the Italian, and it is said that the Italian captured one of them, and that the unity that studied that was Benito Mussolini gave them the job, and Guillermo Marconi was the one in charge of that. And there are documents to testify that. Simultaneously in the States there's a department, in Britain there's a new department appearing. Everyone says to get to know what's happening. This is an obsession, and the obsession continues. After that, hoping that the images come, I will tell you that Mogul project, it was very well organized only to hide this, because Stalin sees 20 years after this fall, a little bit more than 20 days, at the end of July, Stalin, he was obsessed by all these objects, and he phones somebody that's going to be the author of the book Future Rockets. He was one of the millions of beings, free-thinking beings, to which Stalin, the dictator, had condemned to Gulag if he hadn't exterminated them. He calls this man, he interviews him with him and says, I want you to find out and tell me about what I'm asking you about. And he gives him 2 translators, a bunch of magazines and newspapers, and he says that in 3 days he has to give him a report. And he spends 3 days without sleeping, because obviously the prison was terrible. It was really worse than the horrible Hitler, because it could suppose at least go to Siberia and other things. And the conclusion, he gives Stalin 3 days afterwards, and Stalin kindly answers that this is the conclusion that many other experts have asked. They are not terrestrial ships. All the things that happen in the States and other things, it has nothing to do with this technology. It's a technology completely external. And this shows us which was the worry from the whole world. The royal Britain, the Prince Philip, the husband from this long-living queen, the dirigent castes, they live at least 100 years, and maybe when they die, they live afterwards, when they say they die. And when they take care of themselves, like the Royal British House is looking after him, they have scientists and they use homeopathy. They are radical defenders of homeopathy. They use the complementary medicines, and they have, in some limits, very healthy. But others that have bad life, like Rockefeller, after having gone through many heart transplants, they die when they are 90. Philip, the father of Carlos, the Prince Carlos, had an uncle who has Lord Mountbatten. Lord Mountbatten is the one who has seen Gandhi, is the best friend of Gandhi, who was the last King of India. And this, he was in a magazine, in a Flying Saucers magazine in Britain. And there's somebody, Salvador Freixedo, knows very much better about this thing. It was a British diplomat, very old as well, who was speaking Spanish and 20 other languages, and he was admiring Freixedo. And yesterday we talked about how he was giving this book, Liechtenstein, to the Prince of Liechtenstein, and he wrote Freixedo and said that it was very interesting, and he recognized what could have been some of his ancestors that were in this planet, and they had established their systems. The matter is, as it seems that this is not going to work, and I've just broke the work from 2 nights. I will continue. If I continue, and then I'll show you the images like very quickly. 30, but a little bit more. Maybe I could speak a little bit more. The thing is, If you can give me 15 minutes because I started a little later, that would be grateful for that. Summarizing, this man was fascinated, Prince Philip too, to the extreme. It's documented that they interviewed with interviewed Adansky, a contactee from this time. This is another story, and we will talk about it, or we talk about it in Cuarto Milenio. The thing is, everywhere in the elites were obsessed about it. Lord Mountbatten, who was obsessed about that, and his family about Spiritism. He was not a cousin. The royal line, the Greek royal line, had relation also to Sophia, the Spanish queen, as well. And their relatives, his uncle, his father from Lord Mountbatten, and the grandfather from Sophia, and they were doing Spiritism, and that's why Sophia, the queen, and also Juan Carlos, the fascination that they have in the 70s, because she was very interested in parapsychology and UFOs. They were fascinated, very interested. And don't you think the big question is, how is it possible that they are not informed that they have captured UFOs? This is the big secret. The whole obsession is to keep that under secret, and that the Russian didn't know anything about it, that they had this because it was a source of technological information which was at their disposition, a source of information that changed the world. According to many individuals declared, the Lieutenant Philip Corso, he was implied in this, getting these ships back, and other important people from the computer world, that they assured that due to the ships that they recovered through retro-engineering, they managed to get things like the radio. It was a theoretical thing, but practically happened in November, 4 months after the falling. The conductors, that means the radios, they are the ones, the conductors in the radios are the ones that allowed us to jump. They allowed us to have a mobile, they allowed us to have internet, they allowed us to have all the technology we have nowadays. But apart from that, there are many other lines, and one of them is a technology, from traveling technology, very different. I don't know where I got it wrong. This is one of the cases that I talked about, the beings of Missouri, the Battle of Los Angeles. Army says alarm is real in Los Angeles, in LA. This is Guillermo Marconi and Mussolini, the Foo Fighters in the Second World War. Kenneth Arnold, 39 states in the States see saucers. This is in the 47th, and this is the first farmer. What he sees are the rests of this flying saucer that fell down at 40-something kilometers away from Roswell, in some paths that they have to go through by horse. It was a very complex operation, and they had to go and come on a horse, and then with military jeeps. There were many things that happened in, but I'm going to try and synthesize what what I think it happens. They see that on the 7th of this July of 2007. The date is very, very important. It has a very important symbolism. It's material for a question. The thing is, what they think? What they think is that there are hundreds of inhabitants of the area, from the branch of the area, that know that something has fallen. Okay. This is an illness. It's like an infection. The infection from the information that takes us to be free and think in a different way. This is a positive infection. Infection has to be cut. And how do we cut it? We do it through an antibiotic. An antibiotic is publishing immediately that a flying saucer has been captured in a ranch. The Air Force has captured a flying saucer on a ranch in Roswell. And this is not very logical, is it? Oh yes, it is. Because it's known, it's not an antibiotic, what they give us is a vaccine. A vaccine so that they control the infection, and the vaccine allows us to prevent everything. Why? Because the next day, the same day that this is published, there's a press conference in another base, a close one, where they, Roswell is under this chief, and they prepare a scenery with rats from a Mogul balloon that they had brought there on a plane. But on the other different plane that goes after this press conference, they take the real rats from Roswell. The rats were not there. It is documented that they were not there when they did this press conference. And then they took pictures of that, and a journalist, and these are the pictures that they take. This is what they show. This is what they... And the next day they say, General Remy, that's the boss, from which everything is depending on. And this, he goes up to the biggest top points in the military service, and there's a statue of him. He denies with the Roswell saucer. He says it's a balloon. And here he is. But General Remy, he has something, a memorandum in his hand. And this memorandum has been analyzed, and it has deciphered what it said. Urgent, Washington, Vandenberg. He recognizes that a disc is found. They speak clearly about the disc, and then pilots in the disc, aviators, have been embarked in a base in the force. There's no doubt, to this respect, that even though that we didn't have the technology, that he had something that he was informed about, but that this way they cut the problem. And they published the news, and then they said, no, look, it's only a balloon. At the same time, they give them time so that some teams travel to the area, they examine the rests with the help of the ranchmen, and they seal it there. Even though it was a very little inhabited zone, there were dozens of ranches, and all the area, in all this area in New Mexico, there were many small businesses, canteens, and so on. How did they cut this information? Now we will see it. Because most of these businesses were owned by only one person. He was the biggest landlord in the States, the man that had more land, and he was the owner of half of New Mexico. All the land was sold by the US Air Force, so that he built Roswell and so on. This is a key point in this explanation, and when you see which are the charges that this man had until he died, you will be totally surprised. Who has heard about HARP? He was the creator of HARP, among other things. Prepare pen and take note about his name, and go and look about him on the internet. I investigated about this. Guijarro collaborated in the magazine that I was directing. The first time in 96, 97, there were an incredible information about him. For example, they could see him in his private jet landing in Bohemian Grove, the summer camp of the elites, and this has disappeared from the internet. They have emptied the 90% of the information from this man. But what we have is enough. The era, obviously there was not a flying saucer, this is from a film, but it's protected, and there are many witnesses that there were children, 12, 13, 14, and they were riding horses and they saw the object, but the military wouldn't allow them to cross. There are many witnesses. One of the last ones is this man, Aviator Safe, and he explained clearly there were other beings implied. And this, he has said this year before he died, he saw bodies, dead bodies of beings. But most important, this is one of the maximum photographers from Life magazine. It's the photographer of dozens of the best pictures from Marilyn Monroe. Do you remember the one with Marilyn Monroe? It's a similar where she is in a picture with a skirt. He's the one who did that picture. He recognizes in his blog how Life sent him to Roswell to photography a meteorite. He had been told that there was a meteorite. The information is that was that something big had happened. And when he explains how when he got there, he was investigating, heard rumors, and he said, but either it was nothing or it had been already taken away. This is very important. It was very important. It was not a balloon. We have two of the places here. There's a little monument here because there was at least 3 impact points from what it fell, where they found rests. Here it is, one of the places. Remember that the important thing is that there was the biggest, most powerful squad 409. It was the only one that had nuclear nukes, nuclear bombs, and very big level. This was a very high level. But in New Mexico, some people think that is one of the weapons that could have been experimenting there. New Mexico since the 30s. This is the picture that was taken. It's one of the fathers of aeronauticals in America, Goddard. This picture corresponds to this area. There were many, many facilities there. Why does it fall there? Why do they fall there? Probably I'm going to summarize, because the technology at all levels that we're developing there, apart from that the radar, something interfered there. There was an interference, and the technology, the gravitational technology that they were using, probably related to electromagnetic fields, there was a perturbation that this is one of the memorandums. It says clearly, it's directed to the FBI director, the agent Guy Hotel in Washington. And this is the information related to the flying saucers. This is an official document, 22nd of March 1950s. And it has 50 feet of diameter. And this is theory. The story of this implying and the UFOs starts on the 15th of July, 8 days after the 7th of the 7th, when they find the first rest in New Mexico. In this letter from the director, not in this one, in the previous one, from the director, the FBI director, Edgar Hoover, he advises him to collaborate with the Air Force and in this investigation and in others, and they ask him to show him the rest. Why? Because the theory was to safeguard the safety of the country, and the Air Force were collaborating. And Air Force was part of the Army, but a month later, 1 month and a half later, after being for a long time like that, he gets his independence, and he gets a new corps because they are using information. On the 26th of July, 19 days after 0 day, Truman authorizes the creation of the National Council of Security, which reality is over the president, so to say. And it is created because of that. And the National Security Act is written and defines the function of the Central Intelligence Group and this United Army in the States and Intel apparat. All the Intel apparat, which is at the planetary level, happens exactly 19 days. Activity program of informations to study the problem of the flying saucers. They speak in section 102, paragraphs D and E. It's something that was reserved, and then this was the secret status, the secret law for the Secret Service. Stalin, this is Korolov. He was one of the scientists that he had to do this study. He had different signs stamps related to his figure. At the end of July, 20 days after the falling, Truman invited the Congress to accept the law of security. CIA is authorized to develop other functions in the information field in conformity with the directives of the National Council. This way the CIA can have a secret law and integrative from 1994. The CIA is authorized to act outside from the normal rules through which the other public organisms were going to be regulated. With all of this, what I'm saying is that something similar to what it's being discussed, but majestic. I consider all these documents are disinformation. If before or later they are going to see that there's a secret committee, and this secret committee is identified among other forms in an acronymus, which is NSC 54 line 12. One of the members, or one of the things is Cochinos Bahia. This is the acronym bar 2. All of this is coordinated by a committee. It is said that the Majestic 12 committee, Majestic 1 is this guy. He was the Vice Admiral, and he is the first director of the CIA. But the most interesting thing is that he retires, and he will be the vice president of the first organization, UFO organization, and he will defend publicly, through official secrecy and ridicule. Many citizens are led to believe the known flying objects are nonsense. That I can read this declaration. Unknown objects are operating under intelligent control. It is imperative that we learn where UFOs come from and what their purpose is. But at the same time, he did his role. And then he starts, this starts being discussed, and he gets to declare, and he retires from HICAP. And it will be privatized, but he cannot be a traitor to the maximal secret. He can say that the information was hidden, but important information was that these ships were captured. And CIA creates that, the CIA is created through paperclip Nazis that come from General KERRY, directed, and most of them are old SS, and the other part of the CIA is formed by OSS agents, the ones that they were fighting against Nazis, but they also had secret agreements, and they are the ones that are going to be directing the secret government of the States. A man that he would live his life for a conference, and you could be fascinated about that, and how he and his friends were preparing everything, how Bilderberg, CFR, and many stories. One of the agents from Dulles was Carl Gustav Jung. He was the one that conceived the archetypes concept and the collective unconsciousness. So much that Dulles was a lover of the secretary of Dulles, because they lived in Switzerland. This is the General Wild Bill Gunneman, and he directed OSS with an incredible procedure outside from the normal world. I talked to you about the macro operation that supposed the transfer of all this, and the silence required the collaboration, the necessary collaboration of civilians. And in this program that lasted decades and years, there were many private individuals, businessmen. One of them was, please take note of the name, Robert Orville Anderson. This is a picture of him.
He was, as I said, one of the more important persons. And his mom was he bought a lot of land, and there was a lot of petrol, and there was a lot of oil there in New Mexico, in Texas. They sold a lot of lands to the government, to the state. He used to collectionist. He was a good collectionist of art, and a contemporary art especially. And that's the name of the oil company that he was managing, the sixth more important in US. And then it was absorbed by British Petroleum. He participated in a lot of elite groups, like in Bilderberg Group, or the Council of International Relationships, and other ones that are not that famous, but they were all around involved in the extraterrestrial presence. He was a member, very important member of the Kissinger Associated. He was a member of you know, the Kissinger not only was the boss or the director of the National Council of Security, so a Democrat and a Republican politician, and he's been here there managing the world for the last 100 years. And he financed the ARCO project. So you can corroborate all these if you want to check it out. The important thing is that briefing and what do they do with the dead bodies of the ETs? They put it they transport them through a plane or by trucks to the bases, and it's a system of transport that they did it in a way that they confused everyone else in New Mexico that he was controlling through his employees, because he controlled all the information. They transported them to what they used to call Patterson Air Force Base, and in this base there's the 18 hangar where there's the leftovers of the flying discs. The matter is that there's a book about an investigator of the Roswell, and Mr. Guijarro knows it very well, Mr. Smith. You got 5 minutes. Okay, he was talking about the authentic Area 51, not in Patterson. And then there's another place where they have a blue room, they call it. This is just a representation. And some people from the Congress want to visit, but they're denied the access to this because it's top secret. The matter is that in the 52, there's a big wave of UFO wave, and there's in the end of the 52, Ike Eisenhower got to the presidency, and he's the big hero of the war. But he was a patriot person, and he reported and he talked a lot to Kennedy about, and he said, just take care of the military complex, because this is where they are operating and managing the whole of the country. Because he was the Secretary of State, State Secretary, so he was the top power. John Foster Dulles, the brother of the guy that I showed you before, these are the two brothers there. Alan Dulles is not only the one that is going to reconduct all these MK Ultra programs through with people that he's worked with, like Cameron, Dr. Cameron. So, and he then started to be in charge of the UFOs, and them and another kind of persons, including the collaboration with company men and that was gonna be the secret team, what they call it, the secret team. This is a book from Fletcher Procty that talks about the CIA and its allies and the control of the United States around the world. Who was him? He's assistant of the Kennedy president, and you'll know him because he's in JFK movie, and that character that talks to the judge, the deep throat, and the matter is that what did he do? He chose that man there as a Enheimer, the second from the left, and Oppenheimer was in the he knew what crashed in there, and there's documents that certified that. So this man, that Mr. Robertson, is it's the director of a panel with other CIA guys, and they start to ridiculize do a campaign of ridiculization of the matter of the UFO, and they talk about maybe the Russians are coming to attack us. We have to just mess it up, and it was perfect campaign. And I think it's around the 60s, there's some studies, some reports. One is the report of the Committee of Science and Aeronautics of how to manage the space activities. There's another report apart from that one. It's the Brooklyn's report from a private institute for the NASA that says what and plans and what to do in case we found extraterrestrial life, and we have to cover it up or not. So apparently the conclusions are that they have to be covered up and be top secret. So parallelly, they are managing the leftovers and of the reversing engineer of this technology. They're trying to reverse this type of technology. So there's documents that show that this is not a joke. This is one of the most important ones. The letter that the president of the Technology Institute in Washington to a private ufologist, and it says clearly that he was not involved in the retrieve of the crash. But this is Sarbache. So clearly, one of the best scientists recognized that other scientists have been involved with these ships and being. And there's the Moon Dust Project. It's another book for another ufologist. So they've been gathering all this information and about all the crashes and non-terrestrial crashes. This is Philip Thorso, and this is a book from Michael Salla that talks about the relationship between Eisenhower with Kennedy's assassination and related to UFOs. I just wanted to show you two documents. This is a controversial document that relates the assassination of Kennedy with the fact that he has signed a document 11 days before he died, he was killed, that was asking CIA and other organisms to facilitate all the information about space and included the UFOs to the Russians. Because they were starting to agree in the peace agreement. Because Kennedy was a pathocrator. He was not a normal person. He was a pathological, like every one of us, but less than other ones. So he would. The matter is that 11 days before he was killed, he signed this document. He knew something about the UFOs. We haven't found documents, but there was a very important thing. One of the guys that knew more about everything about UFO was Dr. Mendel. He was his favorite professor from university, Kennedy's favorite teacher. and he apparently is one of them, M12, the Majestic 12. So he was involved in the American intelligence before the Second World War. So the important thing is that some say that some of the stories that John Kennedy had and John Kennedy had with Marilyn Monroe, and Marilyn, that was really interested in the UFO world. She knew, and she found out lots of stuff, and she said, and she claimed that she was about to disclose all of this because she was all the time like under drugs and abandoned by the two brothers. So this life portrait says that well, there's evidences for interplanetary saucers, as it says on the cover. It is one of the documents that talks about. It's talking about. It's been certified by CIA that says that this guy, this private company owner guy, he was told by Marilyn that they captured some flying saucers, and the matter is that this other woman was involved as well. From that book, the reporter who knew too much, Dorothy Killigan, was fascinated about UFOs. But that was not what it led her to die in a mystery circumstances, under mystery circumstances. So she died after a little bit after she met with the killer of Roswell, killer of Kennedy. Sorry. So this year, this lawyer, Douglas Caddy, he was one of the lawyers of the Watergate case, and in a documentary this year, he says that some of the people was accused by the Watergate case. He said first, the Watergate main conspiracy subject was to put Nixon and all different people out of the disaster and the problem with Castro, trying to kill Fidel Castro. But the thing that led to kill Kennedy is because Kennedy was about to share the extraterrestrial technology with the Russians. And I'm gonna finish here. And this person, he was about to pass away. One of the biggest American spy, Howard Hunt. It's a legend. And before he passed away, he said he participated in Kennedy's murder with other people, and he's as well involved with the UFO world since the beginning. There's the third of them, and the third of them is Hunt, and these guys were apparently in the area where the Kennedy was killed. So these are the pictures. We compare. But there was more people involved, like George Bush, the father. There's some pictures here that you can identify him at that age. We have other pictures here of that character. This is a speculation because everyone can look like Bush. But if we know that Bush was there in that city that day, and that memorandum certifies that they call FBI the day before Kennedy was killed, and that somebody is saying, because he was from Texas, from the oil company, so they introduced to him the Arbusto, president of the company, Arbusto, and it was not a petrol oil company, a private company, it was a company that operates from the CIA, and he says that he's going to be in that hotel in Dallas, so in case they take a picture of me, of myself, I was just passing by, so anyway. Okay, don't open more melons, please. Thank you, big applause. Thank you.